Welcome to the LBEB show. I can barely talk. I have a tongue ulcer, so I'm going to throw it over to Mona and Colin to talk about balancing training with work, since they both performed at the highest level with training. So, Mona, over to you.
Thank you. Obviously with James not being able to talk, Colm and I will be taking over and doing most of the talking today. So we decided to do a topic that, both of us have experience with. And obviously being an elite athlete for over 20 years, I've been competing in multiple sports, Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit, and karate. And we are going to be talking about how to balance basically training or being an elite athlete with work. And, obviously with Colm being like a world's strongest man, I'm sure he has like tons and tons and tons of experiences too. So I don't know, Cole, maybe you want to start and tell us about your
Yep.
journey through sport and uni and school.
So through uni, I know me and James always have said it. Through uni, honestly, it was pretty easy. You got a lot of time free, and like the focus. University work is relatively low level stress, and also the other thing, like one of my other big jobs, and even what I'm doing now, predominantly working online or being a personal trainer, hasn't been like it's one of the jobs that you can fit in quite well, right? Because it's as a PT, you can fit in when you want to train. Everyone kind of understands it's the gym. I have had, however, a few different jobs. Normally, when I've been in transition, so moving to Australia, I worked as a furniture removalist. Now, this, I'll be honest, I struggled big time. I still managed to earn my pro spot in strongman while I was doing furniture removals, but I was working part time. With this kind of job, like it honestly, it was hard. So furniture removals, like they were kind of minimum 12-hour days. You're shifting house lots. It's a very physical job. So the way I made that work was one, I'll be honest, it was part time. I would only work 3 days a week, and then I would basically just not be able to train on those days. So it's not the most applicable to most people, but I'm getting to the point. So that was when I first qualified to become a pro and compete in the pro competitions. I was working as a PT when I was competing at World's Strongest Man. So, like I said before, it wasn't too much trouble. It was more so when I moved back to New Zealand. I had a job for, I think it was 2 years working I was a glazer working at an aluminium factory. So another quite physical job, 40 to 45 hours a week. So nothing too crazy, just kind of average, relatively physical job. But this was the period where I actually got to my strongest. Even though I didn't compete at World's Strongest Man these years, I was actually quite a lot stronger. I was lighter, and I did my best powerlifting numbers in this period. And what I would say is my number one tip in terms of balancing work and this, so I've got a few different tips. Number one, though, preparation. So I'm sure the same applies for you, Mona, but I got into a nice routine. I would put my meals, basically, I had the slow cooker. I would put my meat in the slow cooker overnight. I would set up my rice cooker ready with the amount that I was going to have in the morning because I liked having it fresh. I would wake up in the morning, hit start on my rice cooker, go have my shower, whatever, get changed, get ready. Then I would put my meals into the open top thermos bottles because I didn't like at Smoko during lunch, everyone would rush for the microwave, and I just hated waiting for this. So this way, I would have my nice hot meals in my thermos from the slow cooker and from the rice cooker. I would put it in, and I would have two of those. That's my meals set. I would always weigh this food as well, but that in itself, like being prepared, made the biggest difference in terms of what I was able to do with having this physical job. And then after work, I would just do what I could in terms of training. The other thing I did, so nutrition wise, that was kind of the big staple. I would also get into a routine where as soon as I got home, I would basically treat my workday as not finished until I got home and did all the dishes straight away. I know it sounds like a minor issue, but I actually find it made quite a
Why are
big
you
difference.
pointing at Colm, Mona?
Oh my gosh, please, Colm, I need you to like throw that, like getting the dishes done to James. Oh my gosh.
I know it sounds minor. I assume you don't
I'm
need the
so
dishes being
glad you
done,
mentioned this. I feel
but
like, yes.
for me, like I'm one of those people now who I because when I would then prep, say my dinner or prep for the next day, I just like doing it from a nice fresh start. And if it was a dirty kitchen in the past, I'd just be, oh, I can't be bothered doing the dishes, so I just wouldn't use the kitchen.
Yeah.
But mindset wise, I was like, okay, this doing the dishes is part of. So we didn't have a dishwasher, we still don't. But doing the dishes as soon as I get home, I would treat as part of my workday. After that, then I could relax. And then I know it sounds silly, but having a nice clean kitchen, I actually quite like cooking and doing all that sort of stuff.
Cool. It actually doesn't sound silly. Like this is probably the
That's
thing
good.
that's caused the most like debates in James and I's like relationship, because I said to him that I struggle to, because I've been in a sport where I've had to eat, and eating is such a big sport of, or such a big part of Olympic weightlifting. And you're like in the kitchen so much, and you have to like, I don't know, for me it's just a mindset thing to have the kitchen clean. And I feel like if the
Yeah.
kitchen is clean, I feel like I can actually eat. And if the kitchen isn't clean, I physically, i I cannot sit there and eat. It's like the weirdest
Yeah,
thing ever.
I'm the same. Yeah,
And like, I'm so glad that I've actually heard a male say this, that like you
We
are
do have a
throwing me up.
dishwasher. We have a dish.
James is like, why did you throw me under the
Yeah,
under the bus?
I can't even talk today, but we do have a dishwasher. It's model Mona, so we're good.
So, I've literally been this last week, and I've said, because one of the things, and I know I'm going to jump to like back to training and things, but obviously since we've had Mia, it's been really hard for me to like the house has to be clean. And I don't care, like, it doesn't have to be 1,000% spotless. Like, it just has to be clean, because then I feel like I can get my work done, and I feel like I can like prep food or eat and do all of those things. So now the last like little bit to like help, I've been like, okay, if James cooks dinner, like I'll at night, he can look after Mia for like 30 minutes, and I just need to like fully clean the kitchen, because I
yeah,
just want to wake up in the morning and have a
yeah.
clean kitchen. And
It
the
makes a
whole
big
thing is, I said
difference.
to James, I don't mind cleaning, but then just don't make it a mess again before the next morning. Yeah, but I feel like, a lot of people don't understand, like with elite level sport, like it's not just about training. It's about the prep outside of training, that's almost just as important as the actual
Yeah,
training prep. And it's like the sleeping and your recovery, and getting enough food in and things like that. So your nutrition is like super important. But I wanted to ask you quickly before I jump into like my, um, how I balance that. Like, how many hours did you train a day? And like, did you train like 5 or 6 days a week? Like, I know you mentioned like on 3 of the days that you worked, you didn't train. So would that mean you only train 4 times a week?
yeah. So back, like when I was doing furniture removals, I would train. I did kind of get weaker in this period, but I would train 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how bad like the removals that we were doing were. When I was doing working at the glass factory, I would train 4 days. So in general, I know people complain about strongman a lot, but in terms of the hours that you have to put in, compared to say weightlifting, where I know you've done 2 a days, compared to pretty much any endurance sport, like training 4 times a week, 2 hours minimum a session. Normally on the weekends, the session might go 3 hours, maybe even four if you're setting up a ridiculous number of events. But honestly, that's not 4 hours of straight training. That's maybe 20 minutes of doing an event, then another half an hour setting up an event, and you repeat that quite a few times. So the time commitment definitely still a factor, but it's not as bad as other sports in strongman. The other thing though, yeah, I don't have kids, so that was never an issue. But I can imagine having the children on top of the workload would be quite a lot. And
That's
the
why I
other
want to
thing,
eat right now.
yeah, My other big tip with it in terms of the eating would be, so a lot of the time, sometimes I would get called down to Auckland, do a little bit of acting here and there, like auditions, that sort of thing, or whatever. Um, and I would end up missing meals. So what I do now, and I still have this, I've got a 6 pack bag, and it's just got stuff like protein bars. It's got cans of tuna in there. It's basically my emergency like travel kit. So if I ever, get called down to Auckland for whatever reason, I can just pick it up and go. Sometimes like I don't have the most time, and back in the past, I would use it as an excuse. Oh, I'll just get McDonald's on the way or whatever. But now I've got that ready. So a couple of final points I wanted to say, like what I would normally do. So that was all my food prep, but what I found other than cleaning the kitchen helped kind of get me in the mindset was just being a little bit kinder on myself as well. This is something I wanted to ask you about, Mona, in terms of mindset. But training wise, I tend to be quite hard on myself and like to, I'll just suck it up and go extra hard, whatever. But when it came to prep and that, I tried to shift my mindset to being a little bit kinder on myself. Let's say I had a 12-week prep and I had 2 weeks out of those 12 where I missed meals or whatever. I would just try to be a little bit kinder on myself mindset wise and think, hey, like at least you've done 10 out of the 12 weeks. Like that's still fantastic, which it is. That's honestly in real life, that's a good result. Whereas in the past, I'd be just getting a bit down on myself. And it's like training wise, I quite liked having that hard mindset. But when it came to preparation, I was a little bit softer. And then I would also, if something did go wrong, I would ask myself 2 questions, which firstly, can I do anything about it? If the answer was no. So, for example, one time I remember I had an important deadlift session. Whangarei is quite a small like city, and there was some guy with a gun running around. So they shut off like all of the main roads, and I couldn't get to the gym. And of course, I wanted to do my heavy deadlifts, so I was quite annoyed. But honestly, there's nothing I could do about it. So there was no point getting upset. Um, but I do still I talk to clients a lot of the time. We're quite obsessive with our training. It can be kind of hard to let it go, but if you can't control it, it's best just to let it go. And then the other question is, if you can control it, what can you do about it? So for me, for example, having to go down to Auckland or whatever, what could I do about it? I could prep this travel bag and then it's ready. I don't really have to worry. So those would be 2 questions I would ask myself as well. And I found just having that mindset, um, whereas in training, again, like I said, I like to suffer. We've talked about it. We like those burnout sets or whatever. But when it came to prep, I actually like things being quite smooth and everything going, being quite organized. I quite like that. Which, yeah, honestly, the clean kitchen is vital. But yeah, like over to you, Mona. I was quite curious about if you have a similar thing in terms of mindset. Um, and just how so for strongman, like I said, 4 days a week, 2 hours training, normally kind of minimum, maybe a little bit longer. But I know for weightlifting, like you were talking about the other week, how you were doing double days. Um, Curious if how you manage that.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add quickly when you were talking about the like controllables. That's something actually that even now, like when I work with like my sports side clients and with my athletes and stuff, and something that I really like focused on when I was competing internationally as well was again the things that you can control and the things that you cannot control. And one of the things I would always say is like, so I would always like over prepare when I would go like to competitions and stuff. I would never not go with a scale. So I know that we compete in weight categories and often like I have to cut weight. So to try and eliminate that stress of not knowing when I'm going to be able to weigh myself on a competition scale. Calm, just hold on 1 second. This dog
No
of ours
worries.
just want to go out.
Good old Aliko.
Yeah, sorry. If it's not a crazy baby, we've got a crazy dog. Um, no, I'm kidding. They're not crazy. They're just like they're special. But yeah, so like I would always travel with a scale to make sure that I've got a scale in the room. I don't have to like walk around and stress. Like where's the scale? Like is my weight right? Can I eat that kind of thing? And then what I would also do is I would like prep a whole bunch of snacks. So because I have like a gluten allergy, so I'm celiac, so I can't like for me there's no way like I can't just sneak in like a little gluten or whatever, like some bread or whatever, if I need carbs. So I need things like, like rice and potatoes, and, I can't have most sauces and stuff like that because it has gluten in it. But nowadays, which is nice, is when I travel overseas, they've got like a special meal on the flight as well. So they've got gluten-free things. But like, it was always like difficult for me. Like, I always had to make sure that I would travel with enough protein, enough carbs, enough fat. So I would have like little sachets of like little almond butters that I would take with for my fat. And then obviously I would like have to, make sure like I'm counting calories, and I have to make sure like I hit my macros and stuff. So obviously on the flights and stuff, I was a little bit lenient, but then again, because you can't on a flight like weigh your meal. So what I would do is I would just kind of like estimate or guesstimate of like, what I'm actually going to be eating, and then just making sure that, as soon as I land in the country where I'm competing in, that, I make sure I'll drink an extra protein shake and have some almond butter. So the main thing was I just wanted to make sure that I get my protein in first and foremost. Yeah, so around the mindset, I love that you said, and I feel like a lot of elite athletes, you have to have that mindset, because so often we get ourselves into something where it's an uncontrollable situation. And I always like to say, even to my athletes and like stuff, is sometimes you might get to a place and again you have to cut weight and there's no sauna. So what do you do? Again, you might get to a place where the food is not agreeing with your stomach. So like, what do you do? So you always have to take that extra step and make sure that the things that you can control, you control. And then the uncontrollables, you can't let it mentally affect you, because otherwise it's just going to put so much more stress on you. And you already have all of that stress when you have to compete in the first place.
Yeah.
Anyways. But yeah, regarding like my training and things, yeah, we used to train, and I mean, I went through different phases, because I started off back in the day, I was elite in karate, and then obviously went over into weightlifting after that. And I kind of wanted to speak about like the different phases as well that I've been in sport. And with karate, I was in school. So what I would do is, even back then, I would train in the mornings. So I would have to wake up at like 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the mornings. I would do, sometimes it would be a bag session. So like my dad would be like in the gym, and he would program my bag session for like my martial arts and things. Then I'd go to school, come back from school. Then I would do my katas, and I would do that for like X amount of time. Then after katas, I'd get schoolwork in or whatever. And then after that, I would go to karate. And I think I had karate 5 days a week. And then sometimes after karate, I'd come home and I'd either do plyometrics or I'd do a small little weight session. And I mean, I was like 13 years old at the time, 13, 14. But I mean, that was like my routine. It was like my dad used to tell me, is like, you have to sacrifice now. And when all your other friends and stuff like that is playing, you are working, so that one day it can be the other way around. When you are playing now, when you're older, like stuff, they have to work and have like a 9 to 5 job. Sorry, I'm just quickly closing that door. Yeah, and I feel like it's so chaos in this house. This is like the uncontrollable. So I just have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, from a very young age, I had to be really, really good with time management. And it became such a big part of my life that when I started weightlifting, it was almost like just a part of me. I never had to make time for sport. It's almost like I had to make time for the things outside of sport. Um, and that always was the stuff that, like what is your priority? And my priority was, I wanted to be the best in my sport. I wanted to be the best at weightlifting, karate, and when I did CrossFit. And when I went to university, I would then train again before my university sessions. And I also felt in the beginning, I think the first 3 years was a little easier. It wasn't as hard to get in like my double sessions and stuff. But then, like in my fourth year, when it was my honors year, and we had to intern as well. So I had to, at night, I was working because I did sports psychology. So at night, I had to go to the rugby teams and I had to do sports psychology sessions with them. So often I would only get back at like 8 p.m. at night. Oh my gosh, hold on, Cole.
No worries.
Cole, our household today is like, it's like super crazy. But yeah, I'm sure if people listening to this podcast must be like, what the heck is going on here? But yeah, when I was in university, my honors year, I had to obviously do like my internship, like I said. So for me, during that time, and then having to do my thesis as well, and I was on many overseas training camps at the time as well. And I had certain deadlines for things, and we had exams, etc. So for me, my fourth year with university and in competing as an elite athlete was definitely a big struggle, both physically and mentally. And I would often just come home, I would cry, and then I would just be like mentally depleted. But then I would tell myself, man, I said to myself, I'm going to get this done. When I started my honors year, when we did because there were only, I think we were like hundreds and hundreds of psychology students, and I think it was only like 10 or something that actually then qualified to go into their honors. And one of the questions they asked me when I went in to do my interview was, you're an elite level athlete, are you okay to put your sport second? And I said to them, why do I have to put it second? I believe that I can do it both. So I basically committed there and there that I can be an academic and I could be an elite athlete at the exact same time, and I could give my best to both. And to be honest, I did it, but it was probably one of the hardest years of my life, having to manage time, stress, and to be honest, like I didn't do as well as I could in my international competitions, but I made sure I got in my hours with sports psychology. I made sure I got my trainings in. I think at that time my approach was like a all or nothing approach, and I was very hard on myself, and I believed wholeheartedly that I could do whatever I put my mind to. And I think they were shocked as well when I told them I can do it both. And I said to them, like, I'm going to make sure that if I have to hand in certain projects at a certain date, I'll hand it in beforehand. When I'm overseas on training camps, I'll be studying as well. And I did all of that. And I feel like from sport, I carried over that dedication to my school or to my university work. But yeah, I would probably never want to redo that year again. It was just extremely hard. And I mean, and then after that, I went on to working. So I was working at a gym at first, and that to me, working under someone and not having that flexibility to take off when I need to, if I need to like recover and those kind of things. So that was a big eye opener for me that made me realize that I don't want to work under someone. So that was when I decided I am going to move back to my home city and open up my own CrossFit box. And by no means was this easy. I feel like I had to work even more hours. I feel like I had to put a lot more in it. But I also felt like whatever I was doing work wise was growing my business, but I could also open up doors for myself for the future so that I can train more, so that I can be at my own facility and make sure that I have all of my weightlifting equipment. And when I have a little break, I can do my stuff, and I feel like even though it was really hard, and I feel like I always put myself in really difficult situations, but I feel like those challenging situations actually makes me thrive because
Yeah.
then I'm like, man, I'm focused. I'm like, throw a challenge at me and I'm going to show you that I'm going to make it work. So I've always had that kind of mindset. It's almost like when I don't have any challenges, I go into like a super, super relaxed mode and I actually don't do as well. So yeah, that's kind of like how I had to like navigate things. And um, after I obviously owned my CrossFit gym, I moved over to America and my coach is American. So I was not under the impression I would train more, but I thought I would be able to actually see my coach more. But I actually ended up not being able to see my coach that much. But me moving to America opened up a lot of doors for me where I could be with like minded individuals. I could be with people who are, you know, business orientated and business focused. And I mean, being in America, like I met James as well, which is now my husband, and we've got the little one. So moving to America obviously was really good for me in a sense of that. But I don't feel like there's never being an elite athlete. It's never easy, and I feel like the sports that we are in, Com, and I don't know if it's like this with you guys as well. Like we don't have the financial support to be able to just train. I feel like if we had an opportunity to like just train, no studies, no work, we could just literally eat, sleep, train, eat, sleep, train. That was it. Um, I don't know if I don't know personally if I would have been a better athlete because I feel like I've always needed that mental challenge. How about you?
I'm not sure. That was always my dream, to be honest, was to be able to do that. Just focus on training, nothing else. But yeah, it never really happened. Same, yeah, we're definitely the same. Like financial wise, like I'll be honest, I spent most of my a lot of money on our food, well, my food, not my wife's, my food, for that time. Like especially, being a super heavyweight, around 170 kgs. And yeah, the like you said, being that level, it is hard. So like if I'm talking to a client or something, it's always important to be realistic with expectations and understand it's very hard to have, like it's really hard to have it all. You can't, like, say social wise, like, I didn't go out or anything like that. My life was very much focused on training. Financial wise, like I didn't save much at all. Our Like a lot of my excess money went towards physio, went towards food, whatnot. And the higher, I feel like the higher level you get on the spectrum, the more dedicated, so the more of all these sacrifices that you have to make. And it's kind of, if you're coming up, you kind of have to be realistic with what you're expecting. So don't be expecting that you can go out with your friends and party every week and compete at a certain level. Be realistic. Like if that's what you want to do and have a more balanced life, that's fine. But understand the higher up on that ladder you want to get, the more you're going to have to shift to that right side of the graph and sacrifice more things. Um, and I suppose for us in our situations, it's not like we could. Well, I know for myself, I couldn't not work. We had to have to work to get money, because, like you said, like there's just not much money in strongman. It is what it is. Um, but yeah, I think as long as you're realistic with your expectations and kind of understand that from the start, I think in hindsight, I probably I did. I know when I was coming up, I suppose I was hoping to get more sponsors in terms of even just things like supplements and that. Um, but it never really happened. Um, but yeah, even then, I don't think it would have made, like, financially, it's not really like, so I wouldn't have to pay for protein or whatever. It's not going to make a huge difference. It's not like you're going to suddenly afford a house.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, with my Olympic preparations, so from our Olympic committee, which is quite silly because we had to do X amount of competitions in order to qualify for the Olympics. And when I won my Commonwealth Games medal, they put me on what they call like this OPEX program, which is like an Operation Excellence for athletes who have basically like a goal not just to go to Olympics, but then also to potentially win a medal at Olympics. And they put me in that program. And the amount of money I actually even got was only enough for like, I think, one and a half of my international competitions. And I had to do show up at 6 international competitions. So 4.5 of those competitions I had to pay for myself and my coach. And we had to stay at like certain hotels for X amount of days, and you had to pay like doping fees and all of those kind of things. And I mean, at that time, I had clothing sponsors, supplement sponsors, all those kind of things. And yes, it helped. I mean, it helped that I didn't have to go and buy supplements and things like that. But the amount of money that it cost for my travels, like I've actually said, like, I never ever want to actually math how much money I have spent
Yeah.
on traveling for my sport, because we probably would be able to like just buy a house, pull out cash with that
Yeah.
in a nice house. So I'm just like, I'm accepting it. This is the path that I chose. This is the thing that I committed to. And again, like what you mentioned, people don't actually understand that level sometimes of commitment. They are like, oh wow, I also want to travel overseas and compete in weightlifting. And it's not that simple. Like you mentioned, like if you want to compete at a certain level, you have to make those sacrifices.
Yeah.
I have lost many, many, many friends over the years because when I was in school, and I feel like, especially with like females and stuff like that, I don't know if males are like that, or if you guys ever experienced this, but because I traveled so much and because I was on so many international camps, I would come back and my friends group would literally like reject me or say, we are not inviting you to anything anymore because you always say you've got training, or you always say, you are traveling and you don't hang out with us anymore and stuff like that. And to me, that really hurt because these were people that I wanted like as support. So for me growing up, I really never ever enjoyed school because I never had friends that were on the same path as me. So
Yeah.
when I was on training camps, I was with the same kind of people who had to give up, things outside of their sport, had to give up relationships, had to, sacrifice friendships, even sometimes family, because family won't, they don't understand the amount of dedication it takes and time and energy it takes. So if you say when you come home at night and you have to rest and recover, they are like, well, you could just hang out with us, but people don't understand like that extra energy sometimes.
Yeah.
And especially if it's not someone who's like filling your cup, if it's someone who, it just, when you come home and you're super drained and tired, like that energy should have gone towards your training the next day or your recovery. Because I feel like, you know, everything has to be so precise. And if it's not, you are never going to reach that elite level. And that I feel like is a difference between like people who want to be elite and then people who are really ready to step into it and to be like, listen, I am going to give my all in order to be elite. Because I've heard this so many times. They're like, I want to be an elite athlete, but I want a balanced
Same.
life. And
Yeah.
as much as I want to tell them that, oh yeah, you can do it, like it is impossible. Like your sport will become your number one for as long as you want to commit to it and stuff. And as soon as you don't and you have that more balanced life, it's impossible to keep that level. I don't know if you feel the same or if you had the same experiences.
Yeah. Very similar. Like definitely, like strongman is quite obscure, but yeah, a lot of family don't really understand it and would always be like, "Oh, why don't you just play rugby?" and that sort of thing. Even though it's like, man, I was just that world's strongest man. That's like the strongest guys in the world. And I'm like, oh yeah, but did you see the All Blacks?
Yeah.
They'll just talk about because they don't understand it, but it is what it is. I was quite fortunate to have like a lot of my friends, go to the gym or I met at the gym. Um, But otherwise, I have had so many people tell me like they want to be world's strongest man or they want to be New Zealand's strongest man, and it's like you said, like they don't understand what actually goes into that. So it's kind of like they don't understand what it is they actually want. Because it's easier to say like I want to be world strong. Let's say world strongest man. I want to be world strongest man. But what actually goes into that is an awful amount like of hard work, so much sacrifice, like physically, health wise, financially,
I was gonna say, wake up in
relationship
pain
wise.
every single day.
Yeah, and it's very easy to say or to look at the good parts of it. You know, you look at the current world strongest man doing this, or you look at the YouTube and you're like, man, I wish I was that strong. That would help my YouTube. But it's yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it, and I would say that about pretty much any sport. I'm sure it's all the same. Perhaps younger sports might have, say, back in the day, like I think it was in like the 70s or 80s, some of the back when no one actually trained for strongman. There were people who would just go to World Strongest Man to party it up or whatever. But it's a different era now for most sports. Maybe if something new pops up, you might be able to get away with that, but the level is going to rise really fast.
Yeah, I feel like even with the whole science behind it, with everything like supplements, sport and doping and all of those kind of things, there is so many factors now. You can't just step into a sport and think in like 6 months you are going to be elite.
Yeah,
I feel like unless you've got some Thor Beyonce, genetics or something. I
yeah, an
I mean, even
extreme
him,
outlier.
yeah, it doesn't just you don't just like wake up and you're like, okay, I'm this good athlete. Like you just have to do the work. And speaking about that, I actually this weekend I was on this. It's called like a Know Your Power retreat, and it was with this Julia Renee, who's a IFBB Wellness Pro champion, and she's like on her journey with like going to compete at the Olympia. And I've been following her for quite some time on like YouTube, and I had like the pleasure of meeting her when James and I went to the Austin Fit Festival. Um, and I love hanging out with people like that. So this retreat was like a full-on weekend of just like basically with amazing speakers, other pro bodybuilders, like like-minded people in the field. And it's something that I said to James that I so badly wanted to do, because I feel like I haven't been like, and I think it now what we are talking about it, I just haven't been in a group of people that's got that like-minded, because I haven't competed in so long. I haven't had that like-minded feeling, and people who are super driven and who's got these massive goals. And I said to James on Sunday, we actually all had a training session, and I said to James, I'm going to gravitate towards someone who is a bodybuilder competitor. And then I went with this girl, and she's competing this weekend actually in a wellness competition. And like I said to James, I want to train with her to experience what it is like training with someone who competes in bodybuilding at such a high level. And I loved it. I loved having conversations with her. I felt in my element, and that's always what I've felt before. Like as soon as I am with people, if I'm not with people who are like super driven and working towards a goal, like I feel almost like I mentally lose myself a little bit, and I almost like go into like a shell. um and this weekend when I was like talking to them, I was like, I felt like an athlete again, and I felt like,
Yeah,
this is something that I want to like almost like throw myself into, because like I've been dabbling, I want to compete in a bikini fitness competition. And, I put it out there. I was like, and I'm putting it on this podcast because I feel like if I do, then it's like I am like committing to like the process. And, I've been training really hard, and obviously I'm just, waiting until I'm like obviously done with like breastfeeding and seeing kind of like what is our like future with like Mia and things like that. But it's something that I really want to do. Like I want to get myself in a position again, not to train as hard and be so committed as what I was when I competed in weightlifting, because I want my time to go towards Mia and me being a good mom. But I feel like in order for me to be a good mom, I need to have a goal and I need to have something that I'm working towards, because then I feel like I can be the best version of myself for Mia. Um, and that's why when I was training with them, like I asked them like all these questions and things. And like there's a lot obviously that goes, into it, because it's learning a whole new sport. It's basically, you have to learn the posing, and obviously whatever is your kind of weakness, that is the thing or body part that you need to train more. And if you compete in bikini, like I learned, like you can't be overdeveloped in certain areas and those kind of things. So that was like super interesting for me. But I loved, and just having this conversation with you, I love being able to talk to people who have done either similar things or are just super, super driven, because I feel like you can have this conversation and you feel like, man, like this person understands. It's not a person
Yeah.
like you're saying, like, oh, why don't you play rugby? Or did you see the All Blacks or something? They're like, if they hear you are world's strongest man, they're like, man, like, that's amazing. They're like uplifting in a sense. And I feel like those are the kind of people like that we always will probably gravitate towards, because we have this high standard and we are people who are super goal driven. Um, yeah, and I just wanted to share that. I just thought that was amazing. Have you ever had like you've never really trained like bodybuilding type, right? Like you've done powerlifting and you've done world's strongest man.
Yeah, not really. I've like just dabbled in it, but nothing. Like through high school and that sort of thing, early AUT days, nothing proper. Um, but yeah, maybe in the future as I get my weight down, that'll be something else. Because I'm kind of the same. It'll be a nice change in focus, and I like to have some kind of goal to work towards. And it does seem to align with my other goals, like recomping the body and getting healthy, basically. So maybe down the line. I'm not committing to it just yet, though. Like you just
Like I'm not. I'm saying I'll dabble in it, but not. I'm
did.
going to compete. It would be cool. Like imagine like we are both like, okay, we're changing sports. We are going. You're going from world's strongest man, going to compete in bodybuilding. But I know also, well, like the same with the females, that they've obviously got like they've got certain categories and things like that. It's the same like with men,
Yeah,
and like the thing is like for your size, um, there's again there will be a lot of commitment that would have to go into that
yeah,
if a guy had to compete. And again, like you have the mindset for it, but it's again like I feel like you have to be mentally ready to like if a person wants to do it. You can't. I feel like just because of our personalities, we probably won't be able to do it half-heartedly.
yeah. That is that is an issue. That's almost why I don't want to do it either. But plus, I feel like back. So I'm probably a little bit traumatized from back in the day when I said I just ate nothing but green beans and chicken. Um, but I even if I did it properly now, I think I would just be, to be honest, just harder for my wife to be around on low calories. I feel like I'd always be quite irritable. So we'll see how you go, James,
Get
once you start
angry.
dieting, Mona.
Yeah. Well, James can tell you today, he mentioned for lunch, he was like, why don't you have chicken and rice? And I was like, no, do you not understand how I've been scarred by chicken and rice like my whole life being an athlete? Like, I'm like, I just need like some cheese and like, and it's funny because again, if you want to do it, like you have, those are the things that you have to do.
Yeah.
And like you have to be eating fully clean and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm sure like probably getting close to wrap up. I wanted to ask you, is there anything in the strongman world that you would like to share? That's
Uh, no, to be honest, I still haven't caught up on the England strongest man. I know Matthew Ragg, so the current New Zealand strongest man, and the New Zealander to make the finals at World's Strongest Man is competing shortly. He's over in the UK at the moment, so I'm going to be keeping my eye on that. I think he's going to do really well, just like he did well at World's Strongest Man. And I also still think quite a lot of people don't know about him. So it'll be nice. It's at a Giants Live competition, which is another televised show. Well, it's televised on that side of the world, but it's an arena show. So it should get a nice big crowd. And I could see his profile picking up quite a bit from it. So yeah, I suppose strongman-wise, that's what I'm really looking forward to, is seeing how he goes.
And then if people want to obviously follow your programming and want to get into World's Strongest Man, they must go to our Live Big Eat Big app and go and get Colm's Strongman programming. But I just want to quickly end off with something that's super positive. I just saw literally just before this podcast that it seems like the weightlifting that was going to potentially be kicked out of the Olympics in 2028 seems like it's actually going to be staying, and it seems like it's almost secured its spot in the 2028 Olympics. I saw Thomas Bach, who's the International Olympic Committee president, made an announcement saying that he's been super happy with the changes that's been happening in weightlifting, and it's been looking very positive, and he's really glad that they have now been handling the doping cases not internally but through the ITA, which is like the International Testing Agency. So obviously there's a lot less they can't hide things, obviously, quote unquote, but I feel like that's super positive. So then again, that's very positive for weightlifters. That's very positive for like the youngsters out there who have Olympic dreams and want to get into weightlifting. So I feel like if, athletes know that there's still that dream of theirs that can be realized, then it will make them train harder with a purpose and with a goal. And then again, if they want to get any of my Olympic weightlifting programs, it is also on our Live Big Eat Big app. We currently have over 30 programs to choose from. There's a bunch of awesome ones that James has put on there as well. And like I said, Colm with World's Strongest Man, and then myself with weightlifting. And also I'm currently doing a really hectic leg specialization program. I've had a lot of ladies actually reach out to me about this program and the glute specialization that I did. And I feel like the proof is there that these programs work. So now people must just go and download the app and have access to us whenever they need. But I feel like that is probably the end of our podcast today. I don't know if James want to do a quick outro if he can. If not, thank you guys for listening, and we cannot wait to see you guys in the next podcast.